much, Laska Hirlock. At the outset, can I welcome my good friend and colleague, Minister Feehan, to the House, to his former chamber at one stage. Welcome him back and say that I'm delighted he's here in capacity as Minister for State in the Department of Health. Now, I'm happy, Laska Hirlock and colleagues, to have heard in recent days good tidings that we may have a gambling regulation bill and a gambling regulator, that all may be imminent. And I'm very happy about that, and I advocated very strongly for that with others for a long time. And that's good news, and that deals with a very important facet of the gambling problem in Ireland. But what I want to address today is a distinct part of the problem, and that is those who suffer from an addiction to gambling or those who have problem gambling, and they're obviously very closely related. I first of all want to establish, and I'd like to hear from the Minister, that it is accepted that addiction to gambling is an illness, and as such is a matter for the Department of Health, and the clear responsibility of the Department of Health. The Department of Justice obviously have responsibility for the gambling bill and the gambling regulator, but the addiction to gambling is a distinct Department of Health issue, and I'd like to hear the Minister accept that. I would like to hear from the Minister what specific services are available from the Department of Health and the HSE for persons with addiction to gambling, in terms of obviously counselling, care in a facility, residential, wherever required, etc. What exact services are available? What services are ring-fenced distinctly for gambling? How many were treated in the last year with an addiction to gambling by the health services in Ireland? And very critically, I would like to ask the Minister, and I very much know on a personal level that this Minister that's with us today is so ambitious to achieve in this department, to ask the Minister what are the future plans in this sphere? What does he see the department doing into the future, expanding, developing services? I think that addiction to gambling has to be dealt with as a separate and tragic reality, and as something outside of all law, regulation, everything else that you deal with to prevent it in the future or minimise it. But the actual condition has to be taken as separate, we have to have evidence the Department of Health recognise that the HSE recognise that there are very specific services there, as we know there are for other similar difficulties, and that they're all functioning, and that there's not only that they're there, that there's ring-fenced money that's specifically for addiction to gambling, and also that there's a future strategy there that will be dealt with in the future. It's no different to any other addiction, and it is an illness and has to be defined as an illness and obviously treated as an illness. And tragically, and I'm finishing out of regard for time, Laska Hirlock, tragically, it's every estimate of the number with the problem in Ireland is not less than 30,000 from the various sources. So it is a reality, and a very sad and living reality all around us. Thank you very much. I look forward to the Minister's response.
Riley, Minister, now you have 4 minutes to respond.
I want to thank Senator and I welcome the opportunity to update the House on the support and services provided to persons who experience gambling addiction. I am aware that problem gambling affects a significant number of individuals, and Senator Riley, you're right, research conducted by Ipsos on behalf of the Department of Justice and Equality estimates that circa 1% of the population is affected by problem gambling. My own view, I would have thought it was a little bit more. The Department of Justice and Equality has overall responsibility for gambling regulation, and it published the Interdepartmental Working Group report on future licensing and regulation of gambling in 2019. The report addresses the social impact of gambling, including the issue of problem gambling, and it notes the social and health impacts of gambling and acknowledge that problem gambling can lead to social breakdown with devastating financial losses and alienation of family and friends. I am aware that problem gambling can be associated with a range of harms, including higher risk of psychiatric disorders, alcohol and drug misuse, physical and mental health issues, separation and divorce, unemployment and insolvency. The Interdepartmental Working Group recommended that funding be made available for research, training and community interventions into treatment of problem gambling and gambling addiction. Funding of public education and awareness raising programmes and the production of relevant information materials be supported, and also assistance be given in the provision of additional services to treat gambling addiction. In order to meet these objectives, the group recommended that a social fund managed by the Gambling Regulatory Authority should be established, and I fully support these recommendations. I am aware of the significant work being undertaken in the Department of Justice to progress the General Scheme for Gambling Regulation Bill. This will include the establishment of a social impact fund that will support funding services to treat gambling addiction. The Government approved the General Scheme this week and it will be published shortly. The Department of Health does not have a remit in relation to problem gambling. It does not provide funding to support organisations that deal with gambling addiction or problem gamblers. The Department is responsible for providing services for people affected by drug and alcohol addiction. HSE addiction and Section 39 funded addiction services have, in some cases of gambling addiction, provided treatment within existing resources. I can report that interventions currently provided to those presenting with gambling addiction include one-to-one counselling, financial advice and onward referral to other services. However, for the Department and the HSE to provide specific services or centres for gambling addiction without additional funding would result in significant capacity issues and the lengthening of waiting lists for drug and alcohol addiction. Senator, you asked about many were treated last year. I don't have those figures, but I will try to get them for you. And I absolutely agree. I think gambling addiction is an issue, and a very, very serious issue. And you know, you see, I would go into bookmakers myself, and you know, online gambling, and a lot of times you'd have to self-regulate effectively. And you know, there's so many angles there that you have online gambling, you have your mobile phone, and I think it is an issue that we need to wake up to and need to address. And I want to thank you for raising this very important issue.
1 minute.
Thank you very much for that, Minister, and thank you. I agree with your assessment of the problem and all its human repercussions. I suppose my basic point, and I'd like you to bring it back for consideration, Minister, is that I do personally think that the Department of Health should accept that addiction to gambling is actually an issue for them specifically, that there should be ring-fence money, that there should be delineated services as for other illnesses. And I would appeal to you, Minister, to look at that. And I appreciate, Minister, your response. I appreciate, Minister, your acceptance and of the great problem that's there and the need to deal with it. And I know well that's where you are on the issue. But I would appeal to you to look at it as a specific issue for health rather than a justice issue, and to look at it in terms of ring-fence funding, and to look at it in terms of direct services and support for maybe charities that are doing it. We're on the one page, it's a question of approach, and I just think it's a resources question and all of that. So I do hope that today will advance it, and that out of today will come further progress. Thank you. Thanks.
Minister.
Thank you, Senator Riley, for raising this issue of gambling addiction and problem gambling. And this is without doubt an issue with problem gambling in Ireland. And there are many actions that can be taken by gambling organisations to minimise problem gambling, including restrictions on advertising, the ending of free bet promotions, and limits on how much people can bet through online accounts. However, there will still be people who will develop problem gambling habits. That is why we need a social fund on the gambling industry to provide support and counselling for those affected. The Department of Health is willing to play its role in providing additional service for those affected by gambling addiction, and it is my view that the resources for these services should come from the gambling industry. Again, thank you for raising this very, very important issue. It is an issue, again, that I have found anecdotal evidence across the country, young men, young women, and many across society. It's much easier to gamble, and especially online, and it is an issue that we certainly need to address. Thank you.